All right, Mr. Martin Noriega, thank you very much for coming on to the BoxingBar.com, and welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Martin, first question, how did you get involved in boxing? How did this crazy sport of boxing, how did that get your interest?
Well, I always loved boxing, but I tried boxing I think when I was about 19 years old, and I was into it for about a year or so, and I got a bad injury. I got my jaw cracked and my nose broken, and after that I couldn't take a punch to the jaw. Every time I took a punch to the jaw, I couldn't meet. Basically I couldn't chew for about a month.
Like when you first started all this and started doing all the boxing, was this here in the States? Was it in Mexico? Where was it at?
No, it was here. It was here in the States. It was in. My coach was Mercer Smith. He was the one that trained Henry Tillman.
Wow. So, are you originally from Mexico, or are you originally from here in California?
I came here when I was 7 years old from Tijuana, and yeah, I've been here ever since.
Of course, I'm getting to know you just like everybody else that might be listening. I remember you from training here at Oxnard. How was it that you went from LA to Oxnard, or how did you find, this gym here in Oxnard, La Colonia, when you did?
Well, I had an aunt that lived there in Colonia, and quite frankly, I was kind of fed up with the city, and I always liked the open fields and the country and all that stuff, and that's relaxation for me, and so I used to love to go up there. So at one time I attempted just to partner up in the towing business, and that failed. And after that failed, I had to make a move, and so I came up to Oxnard, to my aunt's house, and got a job. Then about a couple of months later, I was passing by the Colonia Boxing Club, and I looked in there, and there was about 3 guys in there. One of them was Jesse Casares. I remember him real good, and his cousin Martin Casares, and him and the coach. That was all that was in there. And so I went. I signed up, and a couple of weeks later, I started helping with the little kids, showing them how to stand, showing them how to throw the first punch, and that's where it all started. Soon after that, I was offered a part-time position, and I took it, and then about 6 or 8 months later, they couldn't find somebody to run the gym, and they considered me to just be a coach. So I started running the gym without the title. I kept running the gym for a whole year, and then they gave me the position of club manager.
And with the other guys being there, like you said, like the first time you walked in there, and there was a few other people there, were they okay with you, being the guy that was going to be running the gym? Was it fine with them at that time?
Actually, there was nobody else willing to do it because it was a full-time job with a part-time position, and so anybody who wanted that position was going to have to sacrifice a lot for very little pay. That's probably the reason why the other people had quit and didn't last very long.
Did you know a little bit of the history, or do you remember some of the things they might have told you about what went on there before you even started?
Yeah. There had been a couple of coaches before that had 1 or 2 kids that won a championship here and there. Nothing really big. It was nothing at the national level, just little small tournaments there. But that was it. That was, they just participated and never got anywhere. And then when I started running the gym, I wanted to be competitive with the other club. And so we started digging up the talent, so to speak.
And by the other clubs, what other clubs were around to compete against?
Yeah, well, here in Ventura County, there was only the El Rio Boxing Club that Ralph Lemos used to run. He used to run out of his backyard. And there was a Primo Boxing Club in Santa Barbara. And in Ventura, Ray White and a couple of other coaches used to always come up with some heavyweights out of there.
Wow, that's right, Ray Windmill White.
Yeah. I remember he was like 49 and 50 years old. He used to come up to his gym and help me get my bigger guys ready. He used to spar with them still at that time.
And he was the Clown Prince. From what I remember, he was like the original one back then.
Yeah, he was the Clown Prince of boxing. I remember I saw a Ringside magazine with him in it, and they had these cartoons of all of Ray Windmill White's punches. One of them was around the tree, or something like that, or behind the tree, where when he had you in the headlock, he would reach around and hit you with the other hand. Yeah, he would reach around behind his back and hit you with that hand. And and the sky hook, and where you jump up and come down with a punch on top of your head.
Yeah, very unorthodox.
Yeah, he messed up his hands a lot by clowning around like that. But yeah, he was something else in his time.
Actually, our first county world champion, which was Lupe Aquino. What do you remember about him?
Yeah, Lupe Aquino. I was fortunate enough to work a little bit with him. So he was a guy that had a lot of talent and a lot of potential. Unfortunately, what happened to him is what happens sometimes to some people that have success, and then
that just happened to get caught up.
Yeah, they get caught up in it. They get caught up in the party life and stuff like that, and things happen. But yeah, Lupe Aquino, that guy had some talent. He had some power. I used to wear this body armor protection that I had. So I used to work with him on his body punches, and sometimes he would let go with all he had, and I was surprised I was still standing there.
One of my favorite fighters is Pepino Cuevas, from Mexico. It's hard to believe sometimes to think about it, but actually Pepino Cuevas had his last fight against Lupe Aquino.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was the last fight, and it only lasted, I want to say about two rounds or so, 2 or 3 rounds. But Lupe Aquino retired him.
Oh man, you know what? I didn't even know that. I wonder, that must have been way at the end, huh?
Oh yeah, that was way at the end. I would say that was about the late '80s, maybe early '90s, but I want to say it's about the late '80s or so. Do you remember anybody named Hugo Centeno?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I remember him. He used to come down. He used to come up to the gym. When I took over the gym, he was one of the guys that was in and out of the boxing gym. But when I took over the gym, he would rarely come around. But he did come. He did come and train a little bit here and there. And he was pretty good. But he just I guess he couldn't really get into the habit of training to stay there until he was ready to compete. But he was a good little scrapper.
Yeah, and his son is currently fighting. I believe he's 20-0 or 21-0 or so, and still doing very well. Was there mostly pros? Was there mostly amateurs? What was the boxing scene like there on a daily basis?
There was no pros. The only pro that was there was Danny Garcia. And then eventually the pros that we started to turn out from the boxing program, like John Ramirez, who was the Golden Glove champion and made it to the Nationals, the Golden Glove Nationals, and we had Mario Solorio, who this started happening about 89, 88, 89. We also had Ramon Villanueva. Who also won the Golden Gloves and the Diamond Belt tournament as an amateur. These were our amateurs, hometown amateurs that became professionals. They were the first ones, and we didn't have a lot of experience. I didn't have a lot of experience, and there was another man that was my first professional that I ever trained or managed, and his name was Caleb Ramos.
So getting here and working here at the La Colona gym at first, was it something like that was totally different for you? Was it something that was like hard to do at first, or was it something that pretty much came naturally to you and you actually just kind of grew into that spot?
I think that a lot of it was that my supervisor was Bedford Pinkert, who later became a consulate. And back then he was just a Parks and Recreation supervisor. Now, and he used to like boxing. He was a big fan, a big supporter. I guess he had enough confidence in me to allow me to go forward with the ideas I would come up with. He saw the push that I had. He used to say that I was a spark to that program. Of course, that's a big compliment to me. But he used to support me a lot. I would tell him, hey, you know what, we need money for this, and and there was never any money. But he would help me dig up some money here, dig up some money there, for the trips that we used to take. I just took the ball and I ran with it, and it was a program that was basically a very poorly run program, because there wasn't no consistency. And when I took over that place, it was like that became my home, and that became my project. And I did everything that I could, and met and talked
be able to get online and maybe make a website and have people help you from other communities. It was a lot harder in your day because, you didn't have that technology in the first place. And also you had to kind of depend on, whoever families, you were teaching or whatever, backbone that you had with the city. It was a lot different back then.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was always a fight. It seemed like it was a fight to keep the program open because that was a program that they always wanted to shut down first, always. And during those shutdowns, and it's funny to talk about the internet and all that because what we did was, I took all the kids, it was like, I was walking down the street with 20, 30 kids that were boxers or that were participants, and they wanted this program to stay open, and we would hit the streets and gather support, gather signatures. Not the signatures made a difference, but the noise that we made, and the newspapers, got behind us, and it actually helped us to keep it open another year and get a grant to remodel or rebuild the gym to the way it is now, because before it was a single-story, very small little gym.
Any other job, you think of the city or the county or, whoever it might be, they go and they do their work from whatever hour to whatever hour, go home and that's it. But for you, it wasn't just, you go to work and do this. I mean, you were fine to keep it open. So I'm sure you were doing things that were, affecting your home life as well, and affecting you out even outside of work, because I'm sure you were doing stuff in the after hours that was, trying to, like you said, just trying to keep your job and keep this position open.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I can't tell you how many fights you end up having with your wife over how little bit of money you're making, and just because, you're hooked on trying to keep this program going. So yeah, that was definitely, there was a lot of sacrifice in order to keep that job. But yeah, it was very, very difficult. But I don't regret it. Being a part of that program and doing the work that we did, I think those are very, very satisfying moments when you think back and you think of all the work, the work that you did and the results that came out of it and the kids that were affected and how positive it affected them. It's a great deal of feeling good about yourself for having done that.
Yeah, for all the sacrifice too.
Yeah, and even now, now it's the same thing. I train kids. I'm one of the coaches at the Century Station boxing gym in South Central LA. It's on Florence and McKee, and I'm a volunteer coach there. And it's the same thing. You're always it's like I have to get a job to accommodate to accommodate me in my training.
Yeah. So in other words, you got to have a job to accommodate your second job.
Yeah, to accommodate my hobby.
And
yeah.
it's kind of a crazy life, and I can't help to just keep bringing up that when you deal with the kids, especially kids in the hood, like you said, you're working in South Central at the moment, and over here you worked in El Barrio, La Colonia, in the east side of Oxnard, and with this brings the personalities, brings these kids that they all have their own problems, and those problems become your problems when you're trying to help them out too. So, I mean, in essence, you're kind of taking everybody's problems that you're training, bringing them onto your life. That becomes part of your job as well. So again, it's not an 8-hour job a day. Sometimes it becomes a 24-hour, job.
You become a second parent to these kids, and sometimes you have an even bigger impact than their own parents do sometimes in their life, because sometimes parents. There's some parents that just don't care, are not interested, or for whatever reason, or whatever problems they may be having, the kid is not getting the proper guidance or the attention that he needs. And so, fortunately, sometimes some of us are there to provide a little bit of guidance and provide some structure. What I notice? I notice a lot of kids. Sometimes kids will cry. Even teenagers, and they'll cry because the parents won't let them come to the gym. And I've heard them crying on the phone. I've seen them sometimes get to the gym with their eyes all watery. Hey, what's wrong? Were you asleep or something? And they tell I was fighting with my mom because they didn't want them to come. And so the gym becomes a second home, and the coach, is like the parent.
Do you emotionally get affected by this? Like, do you lose sleep at home sometimes thinking about their problems or all this stuff that you're doing to help them? Does that ever affect you on your personal life?
Sure, it does. It does. Okay, sometimes, I spend money on them that I should be spending on my kids. I got my own kids, and yeah, I feel bad about that, but like I'm kind of torn, but that's the way it is, you can't really deny when something's really necessary or something. Like, I'll give you an example. There's one kid that I've taken, that we've done, that one kid that I've been training for a long time, since he was 13, and then sometimes when we go fight, we're gonna go and compete, and he doesn't bring any money for whatever reason. Doesn't, they're broke, they don't have any, but he doesn't tell me. He doesn't let me know that he doesn't have money for food. And so I'm at this trying to be, hey, okay, well, come on, let's go fight, let's go, and I'll invite him, and he, no, it's okay. No, I'm all right. I got some food in the car. I got some food in my backpack or whatever, and it's not true. And so, I've had this poor guy fight without eating, and he loses his energy in the middle of the fight. These are things that you learn along the way. Some of these kids are really proud, and they really feel bad about. In some way, they're showing you how grateful they are, but they don't really want to bother you with everything. And so, yeah, it's something that look, and there is just one of the things. I got to get involved with the kids' diets, with the kids' parents. I've had to call their parents because they come to the gym and they have no energy, and I'm out there training them. And I say, why can't you do this? And they don't know. And I told them, did you eat today before you come to the gym? No. Why not? And well, I don't know. So I call the parents. Say, you know what? The kid hasn't ate, and now they can't train. So they need to eat this. And so that's kind of stepping on the parents' toes. But that's the way I am. I'll call them and I'll let them know that they need to eat before they come to the gym.
And working out of here, out of Oxnard, so what were some of the standout names that you remember, but just what guys you remember that you really liked working with?
Well, there's one kid, Saul Perez. He got to be ranked number 1 in the nation. He was a champion. He won a lot of tournaments. And so this kid, one time he was, when he was 9 years old, he was at the front door of the gym, and he was just peeking, he would peek. And then when I would look at the door, he would hide. And he was a real cute, little short kid, with a big round head, and good-looking kid. And he looked like, like he had some little muscles on him. So I sneaked over to the door, and I caught him, and I said, hey, what are you doing out here? And he just, he looked at me with his big eyes popping out. He was all, and I invited him, come on, you want to come in and you want to look at what we're doing over here? So I got him, brought him in, and then I sat down on a chair because it was real small. I sat down on a chair and I showed him how to stand, and then I showed him how to throw his punches, throw his jab and the right hand. For his size, his hands are pretty big, his knuckles are pretty big, and I felt his punches, and I said, hey man, so you hit pretty hard. And he did. That kick hit pretty hard.
And I remember him because his brother Eddie, he used to bring me home every day from school. We were in high school together. Eddie was a little older than him, and he used to say, "My little brother boxes, and he's really good, and this and that." But the whole time he'd be around, he'd be a real quiet kid, and he would barely say a word. And I used to think he was a little stuck up. At the same time, I was thinking maybe he's just really quiet. But he had that jaw that looked like a pit bull jaw in a way.
Yeah, yeah, that was how he had the jaw. Him and Fernando Vargas, when they were about the same weight, they spar all the time. And they used to, Fernando really advanced. He advanced, like, I think Fernando had like about 3 or 4 fights, and he was doing real good with who already had about 30 or 40 fights. And so Fernando and Saul kind of got to the same. They were at the same level after a while, where they were just their sparring sessions were vicious. Everybody would gather around because, man, these guys were both good, and they were something else to watch. And so they used to frustrate each other so much that sometimes both of them would get off the ring crying. This is when they were 13, 14. Both of them would come off the ring, and Frank, they were not satisfied. Neither one of them was satisfied.
Actually, the same day I talked to you, on Saturday, I believe. I talked to Ruben Juarez about coming on here as well later on in the week. But what do you remember about Ruben Juarez? Because later on he became a trainer there in La Colina Gym. What do you remember about Ruben?
Well, Ruben was he was a kid that had he definitely had a lot of potential. Because his trainer used to bring him from Ventura. I believe he used to bring him down to get sparring with us. And his trainer had a lot of health issues. So Ruben never really got the benefit of a good trainer that would get him in good shape. See, Ruben was a very determined boxer. I mean, I was surprised that this kid who had a trainer that couldn't train him would be doing as good as he did, because he used to go in there and he was a fighter. He would go in there, he could take a punch, and he'd be going toe to toe with anybody. He was ready to go to war. But yeah, he was a tough kid. He was a very tough kid, and like I said, he never had the proper training. Maybe he did after Sarayda, because I left in '92.
Do you remember a kid by the name of Ruben Garcia?
Yeah, Ruben Garcia. Man, that guy had power and he had speed. He was real tall and skinny, but he had a lot of power for being a skinny kid. And he did that kid did have a lot of potential. I think he was one of the ones that one of the kids that had made it to win some kind of championship at the Junior Olympics. And so that's what I remember about Ruben Garcia. I didn't get to work with Ruben very much because when I came into Colonia, he was fading in and out. That's when he was going, he was about to go the wrong way, and he would come around every now and then, but you could tell there was something wrong.
Eduardo Garcia, who's now considered to be the godfather of Oxnard and the boxing now. But at what point do you remember him coming into La Colonia Gym? Because it must have been around your time.
Yeah. I started in 1985, and I remember. Let me see. There was the September 16th boxing show that we had at the Fiestas Patrias right there in Oxnard. And so Mr. Garcia was already training Robert. He had Robert looking pretty sharp. He used to train him right there in his yard where he lived in that trailer park. And so he would bring Robert to the gym, and but he was very, very reserved. He could just train Robert, and that was it. And so he had Robert looking pretty sharp. And so when we went to that boxing show that I helped, I was already working for the city of Oxnard, and I helped set up the ring, and the one that was in charge of putting the show together was Andres Sanchez. And so I remember we had about 3 or 4 fights, and we had to put 2 cousins against each other. One of them was Ruben. We had to put Ruben against his own cousin because nobody would show up to his fights. They weren't very well promoted. And Robert was about 9 years old at the time, and so that was the first time that I worked Robert's corner when he was 9 years old. Mr. Garcia didn't really like being in the corner. He just kind of liked being in the background. And so he asked me if I would take him up there. I said, yeah, sure. So I took him up there, and Robert's first fight was an exhibition also. An exhibition where they flip the coin for the winning trophy. And so, and Robert, we kept holding Robert back so we didn't get the kid up because the other kid, it was obvious it was going to be a mismatch. But since it was only 3 fights, we didn't want it to be over in 10 minutes. The whole show.
So you guys were kind of buying time there.
Yeah. We're telling Robert to take it easy on the kid, and then when they flipped the coin and Robert got the losing trophy, Robert was pissed. He wanted to. He was pissed and he was crying, because he knew he could have stopped that kid, but we wouldn't let him. And so that was the first boxing show that I participated in Oxnard in 1985, and that was the first time I worked Robert's corner.
Was Robert had he already been in shows like that, or was that pretty much his first show too?
That was his first show. Then Mr. Garcia would occasionally come to the gym. He would occasionally come to the gym, and he used to train this one kid that was pretty big, and his name was Martin also. And so he would always come and say, hey, Martin, you got any sparring for this guy? He would bring that kid and a couple of other ones and Robert. And so, sometimes we had sparring for Robert, sometimes we had sparring for the other kids, but I never had sparring for the big guy. So one day, he kept bringing them, and Garcia was telling me, "Come on, Martin, you never had sparring for this guy." I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'll go in there with him." And so I went in there and started sparring with that guy, and I did pretty good. But yeah, I used to train. I mean, I used to actually spar with some of the guys, the bigger guys, and then once started kicking my butt too much, then I said, "Okay, you guys are ready for somebody else."